2 with Natalie, Martin, Carlos and Jeff. Welcome and congratulations on your nominations. We've got clips. I want to dig into the kind of creative process. So why don't we just do the first clip, which must be for you, Natalie, in alphabetical order. So this is from Loki Season 2. You were actually nominated for Loki Season 1. I love this show, and the music is fabulous. So can we roll the first clip, please? I wish we could show more. As I said, I love it.
Play. I thought it would be the coronation sequence from the last episode, but it was that one.
Yes.
But you heard me playing the viola in that cue.
Yes. So you do Season 1. It's a huge hit, narratively, actor-wise and music-wise. You get to do Season 2. Is it just more of the same, or how do you approach Season 2 of a show?
So this is the first Season 2 of anything I've ever done. It was amazing to come to a project having put in all that hard graft of like working out what it is, and the editors had all of my music from Season 1, and quite a lot of the temp music was just mine. So that's a really great place to start from. And then we kind of talked through and had a spotting session for each episode, and they'd be like, well, let's use this as the basis, but maybe we could make it more epic or, like weird or whatever. So it was really nice to kind of have that as a starting point and then be able to get more experimental in Season 2. And one of the things I really wanted to use was a Icelandic, the Old Norse voices. And I did some recording in Iceland and kind of used the Loki-sana poem, which Loki's taken from. And I used that as like whispering, and it was like calling Loki to his destiny. So that was my big concept for Season 2.
So if most of the temp music was yours, what was the temp music that wasn't yours? And why was it not yours?
Well, I think, they've got the music editors have got the whole Marvel catalogue to draw from. So there are a few bits and bobs from other Marvel shows.
Oh, so they take it from other Marvel shows?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Different showrunner this time? Did they have?
No, it was basically the same kind of team, the same editors. I had the same music editor, and Nelly overseeing it, and Dave Jordan. But it was different directors. That's the only change for Season 2. Okay. So Kate Herron, who sort of established everything from Season 1, and Kevin Wright, who was the producer on Season 1, kind of stepped up a role, and Kasra Vahani, who was the production designer, was actually directing. So that was really nice that Marvel, he'd always expressed an interest in directing, and they were like, okay, sure, like have a go on episode 3. So it was a really cool thing for him to do that.
This may sound like a really silly question. It can go to everyone as well. But when you score a TV show, do they give you all 6 episodes at once, or do you have to score them, episode 1, and then they film episode 2? I mean, how does that process work? Do you score it as a whole, 12 hours, or individual episodes?
So I think the shooting schedule is like quite random. They might be shooting things from the end first, and like they'll have the different sets built. They were shooting at Pinewood on Loki, and they were dotting around all 6 episodes. So
you're not given all 6 to score in one go?
No. Okay. You read all the scripts, so you've got, it's like scoring a film, really. I think that's how they wanted to see it. And it was really fun for Season 2 to get to go and actually, I had a little part. So I was on set playing the accordion in episode 3, dressed up as a Bavarian waitress.
They should have played that clip.
I know. Well,
and you guys, in terms of your shows, is everything completed before you start scoring, or you're doing episode 1, episode 2, episode 3?
It's different for everything. With Ripley, I got handed all 8 episodes at once, and they were in varying stages of editorial, but the way Steve Zalian likes to work is he likes to work as a whole canvas all at once. He did the same when I'd worked with him before, but with Fargo, it's sort of rolling. So it's different every time.
You too?
Yeah, on The Crown, it was very, very random, and they shot individual episodes, lots of different directors, and so they would, I would get episodes all over out of sequence. But then the story wasn't necessarily that in sequence anyway, so it didn't matter too much. I've just finished a Netflix thing, a genre series, and that was almost totally completed by the time I came on it. And that was a really interesting thing to see something that was already new. Exactly, it kind of had found its feet. I wasn't there for the editing process at all. And normally I would say, get on early as you can as a composer. But there is an advantage of not being there through that painful birth period of whatever. Something's trying to find its world and its feet and its whole tone. And so it was actually really nice for once just to parachute in.
Can you say what it is?
It's a spy thing, Black Doves. It's called, coming out in December. Yeah.
Joe Barton.
You're right. Yeah.
Carlos.
Painful birth. Sorry, I don't know if this is working.
Yeah,
but
working,
just going off on that. That's actually, those two words don't sound really good together. But the truth is, it's always a process for me. I don't think I've ever worked in anything that's done. Actually ever. And when it's and we're going in any kind of order, and by the time I'm working on something, it's going to be edited again, and I'm going to have to reconform whatever I wrote. So it's kind of like a process. I kind of like it though. It'd be nice to have that as like the parachuting in thing.
One every now and then.
Right, it's good to have the moment, but I kind of do feed off the fact that I'm watching things change and scenes go from one episode to another episode, probably. And it's just like you have to now deal with how you go into a scene or how you get out of a scene because it's coming from something else in story. So it's always about thinking of adapting the story or the music to make the story work.
And do you think of them as a series or a film?
It depends. I mean, for me, it's a story. It's not even a film or a series. It's a story, and we got to get that right. I never thought of it like episodic. I don't think of it that way.
I feel the same way. I think that when working on something like these particular projects we're talking about, everything is open on the operating table pretty much at all times until you're done. So you're always doing something, and I was mentioning that Ripley, he gave me all 8 episodes. I mean, by no stretch of the imagination were they done. And we were trying to figure it out. And so I would jump around from working on episode 1 to working on episode 7 to working on episode 5. And, everything changes as things change. And as you write something in episode 5, it might inform what you've done in episode 2. And then you might have to go back, and then things change, and then the edit changes. So we're constantly, I think the idea of doing this type of storytelling over 5, 10 episodes is you do have to tie them all together, and you really, as you work on each individual episode, you also have to be thinking about the entire story.
Jeff spoke this morning about being inspired by working on episode 7.
Yeah.
And finding that as a real eureka moment, and that's great. I always really try never to start the beginning of a certainly never the opening scene. I often fail because it's too tempting to try and score that opening scene and nail it with the opening scene, but it's a disaster every time, and it never works. And it's like the film doesn't yet know what it is, and it hasn't established its rules, so the music also won't quite yet, and so much better to start later on to find the emotional heart of it, the moments which really sum it up, and dive in on those first.
Is that an approach that you all can acknowledge and take?
With Marvel had this way of working for their films, which they wanted to implement for their TV series, which was like coming up with a suite away from picture before starting. So I did like a 12-minute long suite which had all the different character themes in it. And then that got approved by the execs. So that was really nice. It was like they sort of knew the style and the sort of feel of it before approaching scoring, and then it just made the whole job easier. So I try and do that now. That's like one thing I've taken away from Loki, is doing a sweep before I start.
Okay, cool. So we'll look at our second clip now, which is from Martin's work. It's actually not from The Crown, it's War and Peace.
So I didn't realise that was actually meant to be.
It's still
But
beautiful.
just a bit of singing.
Exactly. So let's listen to that, and then we can talk about The Crown.
Another series about a decaying royal family.
It's so nice to see it on a big screen. So we can talk about that, or we can talk about The Crown. It's up to So am I right in thinking you took over on series 3 of The Crown?
Correct, yeah.
So what's that like, joining, this behemoth has, gone out into the world, and
Yeah, I was sort of, apologies for anyone who was here yesterday, but I was sort of, it was very scary. It was, and I wouldn't normally, I was talking about setting stuff up. It's really nice to set stuff up from the beginning, but so I wouldn't normally come in late and take over something, but it was The Crown and it was so good, so I couldn't resist it. And they also, the showrunner, Peter Morgan, was like, we want to change the music. He wasn't like, we just want you to carry on doing the same thing because these guys are bored. We want you to do something different. And I was kind of convinced of that. And because of the cast change, they changed cast every 2 seasons. And that really made a difference in terms of, it felt like there was a renewal process going on anyway. And a new world to build, and a new era. So it made sense. But it was damn daunting coming in after Zimmer and Rupert Gregson-Williams and Lorne Balfe.
So what was your approach joining it? I mean, I didn't hear your thing yesterday, so
No,
this
sure,
is
I
new
didn't
to
really
me.
talk about that. It was, I think the idea after seasons 1 and 2 was very, sort of befitted the 50s and the romance of the royal family at that time. I think 60s, when I came in, was a sort of slightly more harsh reality and a different era where the old was being replaced by the new, and so we wanted to use the music in a different way. We wanted it to be more minimal and less of it. I think before it was very lush and a lot of it, and it was so a deliberate kind of thing of let's try and be more restrained and do more with less. And that was about it as far as the brief went. It wasn't, but that was definitely my intention, and what I interpreted from what I was told was a way to try and do something. And I was allowed to do it, which was great.
And then final season?
Final season, yes. I mean, it was always tricky moving through the eras of trying to do new stuff, but stay true to the old stuff, and it was tricky as we got further on. The later seasons were the hardest. I think everyone was finding it harder on the show because the closer you got to modern day, the harder it was to comment on these characters and stuff that was in people's living memory. And actually, we were more restricted by what we could do musically, and in all departments, I think they could be less. They could go out. You had to be very precise about what you were saying later on. There was even a scene I remember when Prince Philip is talking to Diana, and he's basically saying, "Don't you talk to anybody. Don't break ranks. Don't anything like that." And there was one sentence at the end where I'd scored a slightly ominous ending to it, and it just felt like, did you kill Diana in the end? Was that? And it was like, no, we cannot even, just this one note. It's just like at the end, but that had to go. So there was that kind of stuff towards the end, which was a bit restricting.
Was that Peter, or was that
Peter,
Netflix?
That was all the execs kind of piling in and going. Yeah, but he didn't want to say stuff he didn't, he was very sensitive about it. So Peter Morgan didn't want to say stuff he wasn't sure about, or insinuate stuff.
So one note they had a problem with.
Pretty much, and it was the line. It was tipping the line over into something that, and as music, I think you all realise can do. It can really change the mood of something, and take what otherwise might seem a fairly innocuous line suddenly feel quite menacing.
So do you just get rid of the note or change the note?
Yeah, no, we just brought the music out earlier, so it wasn't scored at all, and then it suddenly felt fairly mundane. You know, yeah.
But more a challenge than previous seasons.
Well, for those reasons, yes, just because I felt like we were a bit hamstrung about it was harder to do what we wanted to do. And also, I think with a long-running series like season 6, you know, that's a long way into and you want to write new stuff, but then the old favorites are what people like, and you know what's made it popular. So you have to keep going back to those.
Okay, cool. Carlos, we're going to show a clip from Griselda.
Yeah,
Now,
there's
this
somebody
is-
I'm supposed to look at that was like, it's like, look at me, but there's these lights, so I can't look at you.
It's
to-
fine. I can cue the clip, but this is
Oh, yeah, to raise the volume, because
yeah.
yours should have been louder. I thought. Was it quiet? It was a little quiet.
Is it quiet out there?
Is it? Oh, then
okay, I think
perfect. Don't
maybe
do
we're
anything. Yeah, I think it's because where we're at.
Yeah, you're
Because like I wanted to get it because the voice. But what about those voices? Sorry, what were the voices?
They were Latvian choir.
Dude, that was crazy.
Yeah, they're good on that.
That was so awesome. Anyway, sorry.
He
Sorry,
was-
sorry.
He wasn't nominated for that. We can't
No,
talk
I know,
about
I
it.
know, but it's like it's incredible. Anyways. Yeah,
Yes.
I know.
Yeah,
And the
Yeah.
cast was like.
I know.
Okay, sorry. Go
Is
ahead.
it- yeah. We can talk about it. It's fine. I don't mind.
Oh, sorry.
So, I don't know whether you want to set this clip up because it's
yeah.
very different to any other clip,
Yeah,
and
so,
I think it's brilliant.
So this is actually good because I think I don't know what to send because you're like, oh, I want to send a clip that's good or something. But then it's better to show the process of it's a process, a way I do it in which I use the phone, basically reacting to picture, and I'll sing into my phone like in a voice memo. And then I'll put it into my DAW, digital audio workstation.
Don't say too much because I want to talk about it afterwards. But
Okay, then I'll think. Okay, then I won't say it up.
Okay. So, my mistake. I should have asked you to do
no,
it.
fair enough.
Play the clip. It's brilliant.
Or not.
So it starts off sounding like an obscene phone call, and then turns into this lush piece of music. Just tell us more about that process.
No, it is a way to do it. Like I have found actually over the years that first reaction is the right reaction. Like that what I do, that's like a first reaction to the thing when I get the scene, and because you're kind of like a kid, you're just like if you could do this too. It sounds like you can do it too, but you can do this because you're just reacting like I'm going to score something even if you don't know how to do it. And you're just instinctively reacting to something. And I think there's something cool about that. It's not for every scene. There's a lot of that's like 10% maybe of the work I do, of the way I do it. But when it works, it's really effective. And then I bring in the voice memo, and then I just start fleshing it out with piano. And then I start coloring it up with orchestral sounds,
So that sort of process that we saw,
Yeah.
that was compressed.
Yeah.
How long would that be from the
A few days, I think,
to-
two days maybe. Because you always have to turn something around. Like if they send you a scene, you got to send it. It's already, clock is ticking as soon as you see here's the cool thing about getting to do this. It's like you get access to stuff. It's like you get stuff like Content Hub from Netflix. They send you the assets, and that means that picture landed. And so you put a passcode, and then you see the picture, and you're like, and you get to load the sound, and it's like the dialogue and the sound effects, and then and so you load it up. But after a while, when it lands, it's like, because you gotta do it. When picture lands, that means you have to do something with it and turn it around, so their smiles are genuine and not awkward. They're like, "Where's the music?" Anyways, it's always a time ticking kind of issue, I think.
And do you share that heavy breathing with the directors?
No. No, but I show it to students for sure, and seems like a good opportunity to do the same because director they got the final thing, they got the orchestral mock-up, because they would be like, you're fired, there's no that humming thing doesn't work anymore. You can't say, trust me, it'll be great when we record it, So.
Well, you're also nominated for Monsieur Spade,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen because it's not shown in England yet.
It's hard to find anywhere when it came out. Yeah.
Obviously, what, your fourth time with Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah. So approaching that, so it's a film noir. It's an older Sam Spade. Tell us how you approach that.
Middle-aged Sam Spade, and I think I was just a thrill, man. I get to work with him. It's kind of like I've been noticing that there's some people, like you've had a collaboration with Noah Hawley that's been like your guy, right? Like he's been like a mentor. I don't even know what the relationship you could call it, but for me, Scott Frank has been the reason I'm sitting here with these amazing people and you guys, and so when the opportunity comes, it's like a thrill to get to work with him. We do have a shorthand, but he's always challenging, with what works and doesn't work, and he's brutal. And I love that because it's just it's just like friends. When you have a friend, when you're younger, maybe going out and you put on a shirt or something, and they're like, "Dude, what are you doing with that shirt? That looks stupid." You know what I mean? And like they can talk to you that way. That's very real. That's the kind of conversations we have, and that for me is everything because we're not talking about egos. We're talking about the thing we need to make that has to be cool. So yeah.
So before we move on to Jeff, how did you get to work with him in the first place? Because Walk Amongst Tombstones was your first film, wasn't it?
So this is
his second film, but your first.
Yeah. So I was his guitar teacher. I got into teach, my friends. That's the way in. I was teaching privately in Los Angeles while I was also getting my doctoral degree in composition. Musician's life, it's like you do 50,000 jobs, right? You teach privately. I was teaching Suzuki guitar at the Pasadena Conservatory. I was, just teaching and being a student at the same time. And so he was one of my private students that came out of Old Town Music. And I put my name up in the flyer, and he called me or he emailed me. And I went to his house, to his studio, or he had an office in Pasadena at the time. And I walked in, and there were these posters. There was like a Minority Report, Out of Sight, and Dead Again, which I love that movie. And I was like, wow, these are really cool. And he's like, yeah. I was like, what do you do? And he goes, I wrote those. I was like, what? I was like, I couldn't believe it. And that was in 2003. And then so we did lessons for 3 or 4 years. And then he went and made his first movie called The Lookout. And he was like, he was to me like the friend you have that does crazy stuff. And you won't, but you're like, dude, how'd it go what did you do? And because he was my connection to Hollywood, I never thought I'd be in it. I never thought I'd get to do this. I was just like happy and excited that he was like someone I knew that did it. And he went and worked with James Newton Howard on his first one. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to teach you how to talk to, composers. Because, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just happy to be involved. And he goes away, makes the movie, comes back, and he goes, we've been doing this for like 5 years now. You never asked me to hook you up. And I said, no, I know. Because, and he goes, why? And he goes, well, because in your world, I'm your guitar teacher. And I hate those people, that go, hey, you're a writer, I have a screenplay. You know what I mean? Or I just can't do that. And he goes, well, I'm working on a monkey movie now. And so if you want, maybe you can help me write the scenes by writing music. And then you're not going to get the movie, but you can try. And I go, dude, that'd be really exciting. And then that movie went away for him. And my wife got this killer job in Miami. And I was like, it's time to move. That's why we moved. 3 years later, oh my God, I'm going to end this story. So 3 years later, we end up going to, I'm in Miami now, teaching at University of Miami, doing the classical career, whatever, and I see on IMDb that he's doing a movie with Liam Neeson, and so I email him and I go, if this is happening, there's no way I'm not going to be involved, even if I write the temp music to your screenplay, and then you can get a professional composer. Like I literally said that, and he sent me the screenplay, and I was cheap, so ta-da. Anyway.
He's also a mensch, so
no, he's amazing, man. He's
monkey movie.
He wrote the screenplay for whatever the first Planet of the Apes movie. Oh, that's right. Yeah. And it was just like a whole thing, but it was a dream for me because I was like, I don't know, it was the beginning of our collaborative process,
Cool, thank you, Jeff. Finally, we'll get to you. Apologies. Let's play your clip from Ripley. another wonderful show, a century-spanning score. When I spoke to Steve Zanin about this earlier in the year, he said he wanted the music to reflect the period, and the Dolce Vita was a big influence on it. So can you talk about the music?
Well, yes. Like I said, he sent me all 8 episodes at once, and we talked about the music. And my first go at it was wrong. I wrote a very romantic piece of music, and that was what I imagine 1960s Italy might feel like. And I sent it to him, and he said, "Yeah, this is a really beautiful piece of music." But we're making a thriller about a serial killer, and it's not a romance. We don't want it to be romantic. And I was like, okay, I sort of understand. I sort of understood what he meant by that. Thematically, it all still worked. Like melodies and stuff, I still was able to utilize. But the idea that I was playing into not the feeling of it, but what I was seeing. Because one of the things that was terrifying to me when I first watched everything was I didn't know how I was going to live up to what I was seeing. It was so gorgeous. It was so beautifully shot. It was so... every minute detail about this show is, incredible. Every shot is like a photograph that you want to frame and put on your wall. And I felt like, oh my God, how can I possibly live up to that? So I started writing that first episode and then into the second episode. And then Steve called me and said, yes, this is all really working, but I wonder if you might move to episode 7, score episode 7 first, and then maybe we find out how that informs the score of episodes 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And I'd never done that before. I typically would sort of start at the beginning and work my way through the story as a story arc goes. And I never really thought about what it would be like to figure out what the end is first. And it was the penultimate episode that he wanted me to score. So I did, and what happened was at the end of episode 7, I found this melody for Tom that then all of a sudden made the beginning make total sense to me musically. So I applied that and rewrote the entirety of the first episode and second episode. And then I was done with that, and that's when he said, now write the end. And that's that piece of music. And I was like, I have all this work to do on the middle. And he said, no, I want you to figure out what the end is, because I need to know what the end is. And that's where I wrote that. And all of a sudden, as it all came together, what started to make sense to me was he works in a way that now I actually really enjoy working in, is if you work from the sort of outsides into the middle versus the beginning all linearly, you get a much different take on the whole way to tell that particular type of story.
So very quickly, let's touch upon Fargo season 5, which I think is the best season that he's done. Very dark, puppet episode. How would you approach season 5 of a show that's been running for 4 seasons prior to that?
Each season, because it has a different story, we always said we never want to repeat themes. So themes for season 1 stayed in season 1, themes for season 2. But the identity of the score wanted to have some sort of through line. And then what I realized is there had to be, there's two motifs that last throughout all the seasons. There's obviously the main title theme, which you hear throughout. And we also go back and use Carter's theme once every season. And then there was this bad guy theme, which is this drum beat that plays throughout all the episodes. I mean, throughout all the seasons. Approaching this particular one, yes, it's very dark. The thing that we really try to do with Fargo is to not play music where it's not earned emotionally. we really wanted to, we don't play dark for dark's sake, like, oh yeah, he's killing someone, play the dark music. What we really want to do is play against that. A lot of times that means don't play music at all and let the horror be the horror. But a part of the storytelling device that is Fargo is the absurdity of the violence and the absurdity of the life that you're watching, and how we can add music there makes it. We always wanted to have a little bit of fun, even in the darkness of it. And, there's one scene in particular in episode 8 where John Hamm's character gets out of the car and he starts walking towards where Dot is. And what's going to happen. And you can see the darkness in his eyes. And we talked about how we were going to score that and whether or not we should do score and be right on the nose. And then we decided to do a cover of the Britney Spears song Toxic, which really did add that completely absurd feeling to that walk. Because you knew he was going to go there and he was going to, you knew what was going to happen. And we didn't need to help that. What we needed to do was we needed to underscore how dark inside his head it was, not the action that was about to happen. And that was a really interesting way to do that. So it was like cover of a song and score merged together, and we were able to tell the story in a very sort of Fargo-defining way.
Very quickly before we have to go, Natalie, talking of absurd, I think you did Batgirl, and the absurd thing is that they won't release the movie. What's that like as a creative, and will we ever hear that score?
No. I had to burn my hard drives because I think if any of the films ever released, then Warner Brothers would lose the tax benefit that they got from writing off all those millions of pounds. So yeah, it's really sad. I worked on it for a year with Adil and Bilal, who are Belgian directors actually, and they put so much into that film, and they were really crushed that it didn't get released as well. But it seems to be Batgirl's not the only casualty of this sort of thing. There's a lot of things. There's something that Price, Michael Price. Stephen Price, not Michael Price. Stephen Price just had the same thing happen to him, and I think he'd fully finished recording that score. That's the Acme movie. Yeah. So hopefully the industry pulls itself together and this sort of thing stops happening. Maybe you can recycle it in another film. Well, you won't know if I do. We won't know, of course. And then one final thing, Martin. So you did Napoleon, and Ridley's just put out an even longer version of Napoleon, right? With an extra 48 minutes, so it's like 3 hours. Yes. So, because obviously it needed to be longer. Had you scored the whole movie? Yes. Had you scored the whole movie and then he cut it, or did he recut it? No, it was sort of went back to earlier cuts, and your music was already there. There were bits they just music edited my music into most bit. I had to write one section. That was all. They just sent me one section. Went score this. And no, I mean, I didn't. Yeah, they didn't even send me the whole long version. It was just do this bit. It's all on Apple if you want to watch it. Yeah. That's all we have time for. Please, Martin, Carlos, Jeff, Natalie, please put your hands together and say thank you.